Before I started writing about Detroit history, I thought Detroit history went like this. French fur traders founded it, something, something, something. There was a fire at some point, and then Henry Ford started making cars. So I wanted to find out what happened in those 200 years in between. I first started coming to cemeteries because I wanted to make a personal connection to the people that I had been reading about in history books, and I think a cemetery is one of the few places that really drives home how these were real people who had real lives in the city. Elmwood is a great place to get a sense of Detroit history. It's the final resting place of governors, mayors, captains of industry, senators, soldiers, rock stars, and everyone in between. This is Joseph Campo. He's buried here in Elmwood, all alone on this hillside. The rest of his family is buried in Mount Elliott, the Catholic cemetery across the fence. Joseph Campo was a French Catholic, like most of the Detroiters of the day, but he was kind of a nonconformist. He was a merchant who was selling booze to the Indians. He was also a Mason, and after a high-profile feud with Gabriel Richard, the French Catholic priest of Detroit, Joseph Campo had finally had enough, and he left the Catholic Church, which is why he's here by himself with all of his family across the way. There's actually a battleground inside of Elmwood Cemetery. In 1763, the British, who were under siege by the Indians, tried to sneak up on the encampment of Chief Pontiac, but he knew they were coming, and he slayed the British forces. There were about 60 casualties that day, and the battle came to be known as Bloody Run, because the river, this one right here, where they were fighting, was said to have run red with the blood of British soldiers. This over here is the Scott Fountain. It was built by Cass Gilbert, the same architect who designed the U.S. Supreme Court building. This fountain almost didn't get built. When Jim Scott died in 1910, he left most of his estate to the city of Detroit to build this fountain, with the condition that the city also build a life-size statue of Jim Scott. He owned several pharaoh houses throughout the city, which were gambling houses. He liked to tell long-winded stories and bawdy jokes, and he was kind of spiteful. In one famous incident, he built a building called the Scots Folly, a giant, beautiful Victorian mansion at the corner of Park and Peterborough. His neighbor wouldn't sell him the adjoining land, so he made the house that he built as beautiful as possible from the front, and in the back he built a 3-story brick wall to block his neighbor's view. Ultimately, the Detroit City Council decided to build the fountain along with the statue. Jim Scott in life had been kind of a dapper dresser. He liked to wear bow ties and silk vests, and he was rarely seen without a big top hat, which you can see the statue doesn't have. So the hope was that no one would recognize him without it.